90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know, now celebrating its 35th anniversary. And our special guest today is Ann Mracek, and she is the author of Unpacking the Attic. And we'll talk about how to clean out, avoid clutter, and downsize your office or a home, perhaps for an estate or because of a real estate sale, or maybe you're working from home and you need to set up a home office. And welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm really thrilled to be here and share with your audience.
And congratulations on the publication of your book, Unpacking the Attic. And what are some of the times, especially concerning legal matters, when someone has to downside, and what are some do's and don'ts?
So I have found that my parents announced that they were moving into an assisted living apartment. And that downsizing occurred actually very suddenly. Dad had a stroke. My mother was blind, and they decided they needed more help. So in that instance, they decided to sell the home they'd been in for 52 years. And obviously, they were not capable of this task that fell to me as the only child. So I ended up emptying a 3-story, 6,000 square foot home with 52 years of accumulation. So it was quite the project. Also, if you're in a divorce, that would be a situation where you'd have to do that. Or if you just want to liquidate and take that cash that you've had in the equity of the home and travel or do something, in your retirement.
And sometimes someone's needs change. They have less space, or even an office could be getting smaller in today's world, or someone may be working from home, and someone may have passed on, and then the family has to divide up to clean out their premises and also to divide up the stuff. When it comes to dividing up the stuff, how do you of course, it's one thing if a person is alive, can have a dialogue with their children or friends or relatives. What are some important things that someone can do while they're alive to prevent fights and also ensure their wishes are carried out?
Yes, that's very important. You're absolutely right. My parents were both still living, although needing quite a bit of help. But what we did was something very simple. They decided they were going to put a blue sticky dot literally on every piece of furniture that was going to their new assisted living apartment. Now realize this is 3 tiny rooms going down from 3 stories. So there were very few things. They had to be very practical about what they moved. After that, each family member was assigned a color. And we quite literally went through the home, immediate family first, and we just put a sticky dot on things that we thought we would like to have and move to our home. After the immediate family was done with that, if there were 2 dots on an item, then it came down to assessing value. And the value of an item, aside for the obvious monetary value, can get complex. First of all, I think most people overestimate the monetary value of something because they remember it new, they remember what they paid for it. Well, it may be 40 years down the road. It's been used for 40 years. And the actual assessed resale value of a used item like that depreciates substantially. So then we get into the realm of, is it a tool? Is it something someone in the family would use? For example, a hammer wouldn't be used by probably my great aunt, but my cousin, my uncle, would probably like to have the hammer. If it's a curling iron, obviously my bald Uncle Eric has no need for that. So we try to assess who would use it? Where would it get the most, second life? And then after that kind of thing, there's what I found to be the most difficult, the emotional attachment to items, the sentimental value. And I found as I was seeing things from my childhood, it was triggering memories and honestly suppressed childhood traumas. It was bringing to light dysfunctional family relationships that really had never been looked at and dealt with and handled properly.
So it can open up a can of worms as well.
It can and often does. And I think if you start with the idea of let's realize that we love each other, we want this resolved, and we need to look at this with an adult perspective and quit reacting to things as we emotionally did as children. How can we work through this and come out the other side empowered?
And it may have, even if two children want an item, it may have more emotional value, positive emotional value, and utilization to one person over the other. And perhaps that other person will get priority with something else.
Right, exactly. And there should be some adult negotiation. You have to, in your own heart, decide what is most important to you. For example, my Steinway grand piano was still in my parents' home. I had that as my top priority. No one else in the family played, but it had obvious monetary value because unlike most things, a Steinway grand, as like a Stradivarius, it actually increases in value over time rather than depreciates. But I'm the only one that's the musician. And for me, that was just non-negotiable. I was going to get the piano.
And perhaps your parents wanted you to have the piano to continue musical legacy. Now, obviously, jewelry is easier to divide up, but it may have more emotional attachment to one person over another. So what about in jewelry and other, maybe it's valuable dishes or something along those lines?
Yes. So one of the things that we ended up doing with a couple of jewelry items. Now, obviously, that's not something someone needs, right? They're like. So some of the items we actually took to a reputable dealer. We offered them there for auction. And once the item sold, we equally divided the proceeds from that item because some of the things are quite dated. Some of the jewelry styles were dated. My mother's tastes aren't necessarily going to translate to the children and the grandchildren. So that was one way we decided to get the value from the item and not necessarily pass the item on. That way you can split equally the value of an item over the entire immediate family. So that worked out quite well.
And another issue might be legacy. Maybe there's old furniture or documents that might be appropriate for a museum or historical society, or there might be things that can be donated. And aside from the monetary value, there might be people, immigrants, other relatives that could use that item if the immediate family didn't need it.
Absolutely. And we did a tremendous amount of donating. And I will tell you, we hired a company that, am I allowed to say their name? It's unsponsored.
Why don't we just say a company?
Okay, a company. And they were wonderful. And they actually helped us with understanding what would be recyclable. Sometimes things have value in actually what they're made of. My father had a wood shop. A workshop with a lathe and a shopsmith and all these things, a lot of tools. Well, actually turns out the pile of scrap wood really had quite a bit of value. And a lot of that was donated to schools for their woodworking classes. Some of it went to recycle. So some things will surprise you that they have value that you never we just looked at it as a junk pile.
And again, and in this environmental age, we want to try to find a use and a purpose and a legacy for those items.
Absolutely. Well, for example, my mother had 5 coffee pots. Why? I cannot imagine. But we donated 4 of them to the church because in the mornings on Sundays, they offer coffee to people as they come in. Well, having 5 pots of coffee there was a lot nicer than just one and people having to wait for it to perk again. So things like that have value to people that would appreciate that donation.
In a moment, we're going to talk about dividing things up in case of, let's say, a divorce or perhaps real estate, how to decide what to take and what not to take. But I'd like to remind our listeners that we're talking with Ann Mracek, that's Mracek, and she's the author of Unpacking the Attic, which offers practical tips on how to profit and also to take care of just moving on if you have to downsize. And you're listening to Law You Should Know, celebrating our 35th anniversary on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. And if you miss any portion of this show or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to nccradio.org. So what about in the case of divorce? What are some strategies for dividing things up so to make the best of a difficult situation and keep items, let's say, in the family?
Yeah, so one of the rules, I actually went through a divorce many, many years ago. And one of the things we did was this. If the item, say, for example, wedding gifts we had been given, if the item had been given to us by a member of my spouse's family, it automatically went to him. If an item had been given to us by someone in my family, it automatically went to me. So we went through and divided things by source. And that way there was just no arguments at all. If it came from my side, it went to me. If it came from his side, it went to him. No questions asked. And you'd be surprised how far that went in actually cutting things in half and dividing things. And then after that, it was back to assigned value. Obviously, that was my jewelry went to me. His bolo ties stayed with him. So usage, some of the tools that I use for my trade as a musician, all the instruments, the microphones, the mic stands, the recording equipment all came to me because they were my trade and I needed them for my livelihood. Just the opposite for things that he used. Hobbies of his, all of those things went to him. When it came to cooking items, he just wanted a very few things because he never really was the cook. And most of those things stayed with me. So I think usage is very important.
And accommodation and discussion is usually a healthy and a cost-efficient way of resolving this stuff, perhaps with the help of a mediator. It's usually not worth having a drawn-out legal battle over these things because the money will go to the lawyers and no one may be happy with the result.
Well, and that goes back to what we talked about earlier, where people really do overestimate the true monetary value of used items. The depreciation is substantial. So it really comes down to, will I use it? Is it something that would be easily replaced? And honestly, if it's something they really want and it's something that you could replace easily, just let it go. There's a point at which you need to say it's just not worth the legal fees or the emotional stress. Because after all, in the end of the day, you're going to move on. You're going to start your new life. And 10 years from now, you won't even remember it existed.
And most items can be replaced if necessary.
Exactly.
Now, if a lawyer is going to downsize their office, or perhaps someone else is going to downsize their office, or perhaps a couple or family is healthy, but they're going to move to a different city, what are some other ways they can sort through their stuff and decide what is worth moving and divide up the stuff?
Yes. You know, that's interesting. I was on the other side of that, actually, when I bought the home I'm in now. We went to Craigslist. And we found a couple. He had just graduated from Washington University with his medical degree, and they were moving to Denver. Well, most of their furniture had been given to them by his parents. It was very heavy, old furniture. And to pay to move that across country was really more than it would have cost for them to buy brand new at their new location. And it was a win-win because I loved the style. I loved the quality. And we bought them for pennies on a dollar from them. We hauled them out of their apartment. Everybody was happy. They didn't have to pay to move them. I had my spare bedroom full of furniture, and it was just wonderful. So utilize those resources. Also, ask your friends, ask for help. It's amazing what you can do if you reach out. For example, a friend of ours had a son-in-law that actually had someone that owned a moving truck. Wonderful. They came and cost us almost nothing to have the heavy items moved to our home. So use your community. Reach out to people.
And maybe a local school, a church, a library knows people in need of items. Maybe they have a truck along the way, so they can help you empty out the house or the attic, and it won't cost you the cost of hiring labor or a company or a truck to do so, and you're helping them at the same time.
Absolutely. Once the immediate family had the items distributed that they were wanting, we put the word out to family, friends, community associations, our church. And basically the message was, if you can haul it off, you can have it. And we set specific days by appointment time. So there was someone there to supervise. And people came in and they brought their pickup trucks or whatever and went through the home. And it's amazing how much we were able to repurpose, give new lives to the people who appreciate them. And it didn't cost us a dime.
If you're going to have, if you're going to have a tag sale or a moving sale, is it something you can do yourself? Should you hire a professional? And are any other caveats to make sure you're not a target of a robbery or vandalism of your property?
Yes. Well, anytime we had the word go out that people could come in, we had specific times. So the house is only going to be open on these set specific times. And then I actually had the people from the moving company that we worked with there with me. So I was never there in an almost empty house by myself. They were wonderful company. There were many young men that had helped us haul things the things we took to our house. They were all there. And we just scheduled times when we knew they would still be there. They would be working there, or perhaps we had the cleaning crew there. So we orchestrated it so that I was never in the empty house by myself.
And sometimes people just accumulate stuff, and they should periodically do some kind of cleaning,
Absolutely.
Whether it's an office, a law office, or a home, just to get rid of clutter, make the place more livable for safety, among other things. And is that something people should do periodically? And is there an easy approach they can start with or hire someone to help them?
I'm a big advocate of getting help. Be that your community, your extended family, or hiring help. We actually hired a cleaning crew to come in, and it's amazing how much you do accumulate. And I have bad shoulders, so I can't do a lot of lifting, so I needed help. And you need to assess, what things can I do myself? What things do I need time with? Extra time to do and still be able to do them myself, or what things can I just absolutely not do on my own and I need to hire? So I think assessing the proper amount of time is a valuable resource. We found that if we allocated more time, we had more volunteers and people coming in where it fit into their schedule. So really, time is a very valuable thing you need to put into the equation.
And it's good to do it periodically, just not when you're moving or someone has passed on.
It is. And so my mother, for example, we just took several things out of her assisted living apartment because her mobility has decreased and there were tripping hazards in her room. And so even though we have gone through this process from the house to the assisted living, we're now doing it again. To make sure that she has empty floor space so she can move about. So yes, it's an ongoing process.
And as you're unpacking the attic, it's important to look at things that may have been packed away, because some of it could actually be treasure rather than trash.
Absolutely. My grandfather's meerschaum pipe is one of the treasures that I kept, not because of its monetary value, but because to me, it really embodies the spirit of my grandpa. And it was an item that had no one smokes a pipe anymore in my family, but it was an item that had really emotional charge for me. And I hadn't seen it literally in decades. I was surprised that we still had it in a box. So for me, that was an emotional treasure. I actually have it sitting beside me most of the time.
And I just want to mention, sometimes when you're unpacking the attic, you do find stuff that might have been picked up by a distant relative. You might have picked up a long time ago, and it may be something that's unique and has a lot of value.
That's true. And the best way, I think, to assess that, well, there's several ways. You can go on Etsy, you can go on Google, and you can see if there are similar items for sale, and that will give you an indicator. But also just take it to like
an antique store or a jeweler.
An antique store, right. We actually took things to the home road show. They bought several items from us. They were things that we weren't going to use, but they did have some antique value. Okay. There were some antique coins that we took and had evaluated and then resold and split the assets.
Or knowing the value, you may want to keep some items in the family. I'd just like to remind our listeners, you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. And if you missed any portion of the show or you'd like to tell someone else about it, just go to nccradio.org. My guest is Ann Mracek, Mracek, and she's the author of Unpacking the Attic. And we've been talking about going through stuff to downsize, perhaps generate cash or get ready for a move, or perhaps after someone has passed on. And what else do you cover in your book, Unpacking the Attic?
Well, the items from my childhood triggered emotional responses. And so I investigated in my memories the 5 basic childhood traumas and how to move on and heal from those.
And do you want to just briefly say what they are?
Sure. The first one, I think, is...
it doesn't have to be in order, just to tell us the stuff.
Okay, all right. So injustice is one of them. When you have felt an injustice in childhood and how to remove that crippling low self-esteem. Another is abandonment. A lot of children feel abandoned either by a parent or by another sibling, and how you deal with that. Instances of abuse. How do you realize that you are not the causation as a child of that, and how do you forgive and heal? One is rejection. My grandfather, that I felt close to, still gave a lot of rejection to me. And how do I move forward from that? So there's a betrayal. All of these different childhood traumas well up inside of you emotionally. And I think that's what just happened to me, actually. And you have to learn to say, okay, I'm an adult now. How do I go back and give healing and self-acceptance and love to the child that still lives within?
And on the flip side, sometimes finding things will trigger pleasant memories of connections and learning and milestones in your life.
Yes, absolutely. There's. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what is your website, and what information can our listeners find on your website? Yes,
it's Ann at AnnMracek.com. So ANN at ANNMRACEK.com. And there's my website, of course, has the book, Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child, but also my YouTube channel, which has now over 44,000 subscribers. And that is another one of my books. It's called My Best Friends Live in the Woods. And I am presenting each chapter as an interactive children's theater where I tell the story. I'm the composer of all the background music. And there's discussion and questions after each chapter to encourage meaningful conversation, teaching mindfulness and compassion.
And where is your book, Unpacking the Attic, available? How can someone obtain it?
That is available on Amazon.
What are your final thoughts about do's and don'ts if someone has to unpack the attic or downsize or move on from a house or a lot of stuff, or an office? They have to transition their office to a smaller setting or close it down.
Well, when it's all done and you've gone from overwhelmed to empty walls, make your peace and learn to say goodbye. Keep the good memories, leave the rest, and find the grace of forgiveness, the wisdom to learn from your adversities, the courage to confront your memories, resilience to move forward with confidence, and the faith that love always wins. So focus on the positive. Mindset is important.
And as you're trying to decide whether to save, toss, or you're not sure, it's better to go through the stuff quickly. Some stuff you'll see right away you can toss or you want to give it away. Some stuff you'll know right away that you want to save it. And some stuff you'll be uncertain about. So rather than spending all of your time and energy on that uncertainty pile, it's best to go through at least on the first take, go through all the items, and then you can revisit the uncertain pile and then make decisions again. And there'll be stuff that's still uncertain and you can deal with it down the road.
Absolutely. And I really think that your first impression is your correct one. Let your heart and your gut tell you, because if you have an immediate emotional attachment to something and you say, oh, I really want that in my life, it's probably the thing you should save. If you're uncertain, let it go. Just let it go.
And if you're dealing with a family or colleagues and there's no unanimity, you're better off just revisiting it down the road or the next day rather than getting bogged down on that item.
Absolutely. Yes, just keep the process rolling.
And what are your final thoughts about unpacking the attic?
It's a difficult process, but I think it can be very healing. Retrospection is a very healing elixir. And when we revisit our memories of these items, we can really empower ourselves to move forward with better self-esteem and self-love and acceptance. Okay,
I would like to thank our guest, Ann Mracek, Mracek, for all the ideas she's given us about uncluttering a law practice or a home for different reasons and the importance of doing these things periodically. If you missed any portion of the show or you want to tell someone else about it, please go to the website at nccradio.org. And thank you for listening to Law You Should Know, celebrating its 35th anniversary at Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. And please join us again this same time next week for another program of Law You Should Know.